All right, there is something in the global wind, right? Right now, Greece, when we talk about all these protests here for more benefits and the like, Greece is dealing with the same, as we speak, anti-austerity measures going into effect, and they're not being received too nicely or kindly on the part of Greeks who feel enough already. Although I don't know what the Greek term is for enough already. We've got some pretty smart folks who could sort of play all this out and where big government is going everywhere. Bob Wiedemer joining us, Larry Winget, and Danielle DiMartino Booth. Danielle, what do you think of this global trend, this push? We need more, and we don't necessarily want to be the ones to pay for it.
I think you're right about it being global. Now it's a $12.5 trillion experiment into trying not to pay for things, but that's not the American way the last time I checked. Listening to the students earlier, I mean, thinking about working 2 jobs to make my way through community college, that's how I got my start, but I did it. I mean, that seems like that's the honest way to go.
You just came a little early. Now it'll all be free. You don't get about it. Larry, when you hear that and you hear this young lady, she's very passionate about it, I take nothing away from her, but I mean, it seemed to be unrealistic thinking to assume that all of that could be paid for on the backs of 1 or 2% of the population, and everything's going to be hunky-dory.
You know, it was real easy for her to say, not having any money, that if she had money, she would be willing to give it all away to take care of other people who, again, don't have money. To me, the most telling thing in the entire interview was her last statement, where she said, if we just get enough people protesting in the streets, we can turn this atrocity around, and evidently expecting people to earn their own way and to pay their own way is an atrocity that needs to be protested.
Bob, your thoughts?
It's interesting. I think it's just part of a whole mentality that we now just don't worry about debt. We're almost immune to it. Of course, what she's saying doesn't make economic sense, but I'll have to admit, Neil, if you just threw $1 trillion of student debt onto our $18.5 trillion mountain already.
I can't blame her. What's the big deal? We have a lot of debt. I mean, what's the big deal?
And it's not just here, but around the world. We've doubled our world debt in the last 10 years from about $9 trillion to $100 trillion.
That's a lesson that was carried away from the subprime housing crisis. It's that debt is expungible. It's not a good lesson, but you think about...
And we're all victims.
But you think about her generation. You think about where she's coming from. They've never known anything that wasn't a zero interest rate environment, so I don't think they necessarily have a true concept of debt, an entire generation.
And you should stress here, I mean, all it takes is a slight uptick in those rates, and that debt becomes an even more worrisome burden. Larry, what do you tell kids, young people, when you go around the country? You're in big demand, the best-selling author of It's Tough Love Approach. You've almost single-handedly made a cottage industry. But I mean that in a good way. You're reminding people there is such thing as money in, money out. What reaction do you get when you are saying that?
Well, from people who have had to earn their own way, they love what I have to say. But when you're talking to people who have an expectation because their parents didn't train them, people only respond the way they're trained. And what was just said is absolutely right. These kids don't know any different way to approach things. There's an expectation that somebody should take care of them. So I tell people the only thing you're entitled to is your own opinion. The rest of it should be earned. And that is not a happy message right now among millennials, and especially people going to college.
But Republicans aren't offering, they're offering the tough love approach, but they don't really give the long-term approach, right?
Right.
Bob, what do you think of that?
Well, absolutely not. We just raised our debt ceiling. In fact, in one day, our debt just popped up $300 billion because we unwound the accounting tricks that kept our debt ceiling down. So, I mean, it's the whole society is kind of looking at each other, and, you know, nobody's really worried. Millennials are looking at the government. The government doesn't need to worry about debt.
Well, the government inherently benefits, right, from some of the lowest borrowing costs globally in 5,000 years. It's pretty easy to make lots of empty promises when your own financing cost is the U.S. government, Uncle Sam.
For now.
For now.
Stick around.